Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and today I am bringing you some winter book recommendations. These are just books that I think are really great choices for your winter TBRs, not necessarily because they're holiday themed or anything like that, but mostly just because they have like a cozy vibe to them, or there's something, related to winter in the story that makes it just that much more atmospheric to read when it like actually is snowing outside, or you do have your Christmas decorations up, or whatever it might be. They just feel like wintry reads to me. So I tried to narrow it down to like 5 recommendations, but I literally could not do it, and so I think I have like 6 or 7 books on this list, and these are all ones that I have read and that I really enjoy, and some of them are actually ones that I'm hoping to reread this winter. So yeah, they're definitely favorites. Without any further ado, let's get into the recommendations. The first one I have feels pretty obvious, and it's one that I read earlier this year, and that is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. I did read this as a kid, but it was in like 2nd grade, I think, so it had been a really long time since I revisited this. And this is, if you are unaware, a story of 4 children who find their way into Narnia via a wardrobe in the home that they're staying in for the summer. And while it's summer where they are, when they walk into the wardrobe and into Narnia, it is winter. It's like constantly snowing during the book, so it just feels like one that is perfect to read when it's, snowing outside, where you can have a cup of hot chocolate, and it's a cute story. It's very quick to get through. It's also the beginning of the Chronicles of Narnia series, and so there are plenty to read from there. I don't know how wintry the other ones are. I've only read the first 2. Definitely The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a great one to pick up in the winter months. Sticking with that YA theme, I am going to recommend one of my favorite books of all time, and really, again, this whole series, and that is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This book is relatively short and really quick to get through. I know a lot of people read this in school. I think I read this in 8th grade, and for some reason this book just feels wintry and cozy to me. I think part of it is the ending, and if you've read it then you understand. This is a story of Jonas, who lives in a world where everything bad has basically been eliminated from society. So there's no hunger, there's no war, there's no hatred, no poverty. In this story, everyone is given a role within society, and their lives are pretty much dictated for them. They are told who to marry, they are given children, they really have every part of their life sort of planned out for them. And Jonas is given a very important role in this society. He is going to become the keeper of memories, and it's a really interesting story about what would happen if all of the bad was gone from the world. It's a hard book to describe, I think, because there's so much more to it than just meets the eye, but it's definitely a good winter recommendation in my opinion, and the rest of the books also have a nice wintry feel to them as well. I read this full series, it's 4 books, back in 2015, my senior year of college. I read this during my winter break, and it was so perfect for curling up on the couch and just reading. I love these books so much, and I'm definitely planning to reread this one. Next up, I have a YA fantasy story, and that is Girls Made of Snow and Glass by Melissa Basherdust. This is a retelling of Snow White, and it's a really cool twist on the classic fairy tale. So we follow 2 main characters, and we alternate between their narratives with each chapter. We have Lynette, who is the Snow White character within this story, and then we have Mina, who is the stepmother. The biggest difference, or I guess one of the biggest differences in this book, is that these 2 women love each other. They start out as really great friends. Lynette really looks up to Mina. Mina really cares for Lynette, and I loved their relationship and how the story depicted the just authenticity of that type of mother-daughter relationship, and also some of the struggles within. During the story, Lynette finds out that the story that her father had always told her about her dead mother, that she had died while giving birth to Lynette, is not true. She finds out that her mother died somehow. I don't remember what actually happened, and her father, in his grief and sorrow, asks the magician to basically create a daughter in her image for him. And so Lynette is crafted out of snow to be the spitting image of her mother, which is a little bit creepy. So she finds that out and has all of these, like, this inner conflict about her identity and who she is. And then her father decides to give Lynette control of part of the society or kingdom or whatever that Mina had always had a hand in ruling. And so because of that, they sort of are turned on each other, or that's the goal. And so it's a really interesting story following that sort of narrative, and how will they continue to have a relationship if they are out against one another. It's a very cool twist on a classic fairy tale, and I absolutely loved it. There is also a female-female relationship in it, which is amazing. I read this back in July for Retellathon, and while I loved it then, I feel like I would have loved it so much more had I read it in the winter. This takes place in a world where it's all winter all the time, and so that's a huge part of the story, and I just didn't have that sort of like mood or atmosphere going on. So I wish I had read it in the winter, but hopefully now all of you can read it at the appropriate season. Next up, again, YA fantasy, although, I don't know, this toes the line between YA and adult, in my opinion. Literally anything by Leigh Bardugo, anything in the Grisha verse. I think it's really cool to read the original Grisha trilogy before reading Six of Crows and Cricket Kingdom, but you absolutely do not have to. You can read these as their own stories. But the entire Grisha verse, the original trilogy, this duology, as well as her fairy tales in Language of Thorns, all have a really cozy, wintry vibe to them. And while these are great to read at any time of year, I feel like just having that moody atmosphere of, you know, being in the dark and being in the cold really add something to these stories. I'm not going to go into a full synopsis of the whole Grishaverse, but basically it's a fantasy story inspired by major European cities, and the magic system is really cool. These are sort of heist stories, whereas the original Grisha trilogy, starting with Shadow and Bone, are more like questy, I guess. They have more of a journey aspect to them. But yeah, I love Leigh Bardugo. I love the Grisha stories, especially Six of Crows and Cricket Kingdom. And I really, really, really loved Language of Thorns as well. So I think any of those choices would be 100% appropriate for the winter time. Okay, stepping away from fantasy, still a YA but a contemporary story, I have We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. This is a story that alternates between a couple different timelines, one of them being in the winter during winter break at a college. So this is a story of Marin, who is staying in her dorm for the duration of her winter break. And we don't really know why when the story starts out. She just kind of mentions that she can't go home, she doesn't have a place to go, and it's clear that she has been through some sort of traumatic event and she has sort of removed herself from her home life. But her best friend Mabel, who she has sort of distanced herself from since they both went away to college, surprises her by showing up at her college to try to figure out what the heck is going on, because Marin has been kind of isolating herself. She hasn't talked to Mabel in months, and so she goes to Marin's college to try to figure out what's going on. Like I said, it's sort of a dual timeline. Some of the story is taking place during winter break at the college in the dorms, and then also flashing back to the events starting, I think, about a year before, and just sort of working up to the event that has sort of made Mabel become so isolated and separate herself and all of that. So it's a really character-driven story, and I think that's a great kind of book to read in the winter. Something about that, just getting to know those characters and really getting a full look at who they are, their motivations, and their relationships. It just feels right for winter. I have no like basis for that, but for me, that is definitely something that I like to read. Don't get me wrong, I love like journey stories, quests and heists and action as well, but something about those quiet, reflective stories feels like the quiet sort of, you know, time to look back on the year that winter just kind of inherently gives us. And so I think this is a perfect story if you're looking for something like that. And then finally, I have one of my favorite books of all time to recommend. I think this is the perfect winter read, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I have talked about this book many times on my channel. This is one that I 1000% want to reread this year. I read it for the first time back in 2015 in the middle of winter, I think right before Christmas, and it was actually like perfect. I loved it. So this book follows four sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, who are growing up in sort of Civil War era America, New England, Boston. It's sort of coming of age stories for all of them, and it's looking at your familial and cultural obligations and what society expects of you, and then how that interacts with your own passions and desires and you know, who you see yourself being. These are all very different young women, and I adore them. I adore the story. I adore the relationships that they each have with each other, as well as with their mother. I can't even express how much this book means to me. It's one that, I don't know, I think stands the test of time. I think everybody should read it, especially in the winter. And the movie adaptation is also pretty good. I love Winona Ryder's interpretation of Jo. I think she does a fantastic job. I can't even put into words how great this book is, and I think you should read it. I think it pretty much visits the sisters every Christmas. That's kind of a theme throughout the book, so maybe that's why it feels really wintry, but something about it just is cozy, and it's filled with so much love and hope and sadness and, you know, hardship, but kind of the optimism that grows from that. Even if you feel like you don't like classics, or if you feel like you don't like historical fiction, I think you should try it. It's so good, and I'm just rambling now and telling you how great it is, but it's true. All right, everyone, that's everything for this video. These are my top 5, 6, 7, whatever, winter read recommendations. If you haven't read any of these books yet, but they are on your TBR, I would definitely recommend picking them up during this time of year, and then let me know what you think of them. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts, and if the winter vibes, you know, gave any sort of special meaning to your reading. But anyway, you can leave me a comment down below, or you can find all the links to my social media accounts in the description box. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my next video. But until then, happy reading. Bye.